Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to the origins of American gun culture, and I'm not too sure what to expect here. This is a reaction from someone who doesn't come from a country where guns are really a thing at all. So it's going to be interesting to learn. I mean, I guess what I know about gun culture, most people own them in the US. I don't actually know the percentages, to be fair. I know some people will have multiple guns, like some guns for hunting and some for protection and different things. But growing up in a country where no one has a gun, unless I guess some farmers, and I mean there are some people that probably do, but I think it's below 1%. Again, I'm not, that's not any facts, that's just what I'm assuming. But yeah, we're gonna learn, because it's a different world in the US in terms of like gun culture and stuff. It's a completely different world, and I guess it's gonna say where it comes from and how it became what it is now, because I think guns per person, is it higher in Serbia or the US? I think it's the US has more guns per capita. So it is the United States. Oh, the Falkland Islands. There's 120 firearms per 100,000 people. Wait, there's more than that, isn't there? I thought there was like more guns than people. Well, that's a bit confusing. Okay, Serbia's 5, so it's the highest in Europe. Then Montenegro, which is near Serbia. It's 120 per 100 people. I thought it was 100,000 people. Oh god damn. Oh, it's a lot more than Serbia. It's like triple. There's a lot more European countries than I would have assumed. Where's the UK going to be? Here we go. England and Wales, 127, which is where I can say I'm literally on the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of growing up in a country where it's common. I mean, 4.6 is higher than I thought it would be, but I guess, again, some people will own more than flipping one gun. Some countries, there's not even any. In Indonesia's massive. 263 million people, and there's 0.0. God damn. Okay, well, yeah, the UK is 127. God, that's a big difference. Anyway, that's just a little look into the differences in the culture, I guess, with the two countries. I feel like these two countries are quite similar in a lot of ways. I mean, I feel like maybe that's based on the fact that we both speak English, and then you just link more things. But one area that we're not the same is this, I guess. And yeah, so it's going to be me learning about, I guess, like I've said already, the history and the culture behind it. But yeah, let's jump into this. Links are in the description to my Patreon if you want to see some more of my reactions. I'm going to be going into this not in a political way. I know it's going to be a political video, but I'm just going to be in the middle, man. I can't be bothered for either side in the comments giving their opinions on what I'm saying. So don't hate me too much, but we're going to jump into this.
If you look at all the maps of the Spanish Empire you can find, you will notice that the Spaniards claimed far more land than they actually had. Claims that were sometimes outright ridiculous, costly.
Is this the king speaking? He sounds like the poshest man I've ever heard.
And completely unenforceable. However, in North America, not only did they claim more than they actually had, but being that they were the first to colonize the American continents, one has to wonder why they failed at enforcing all their claims. Claims that stretched from Alabama to Minnesota to Alaska and even to Hawaii, over a total of what are today 27 US states. Guns and property is the short answer. The Spanish came to the New World to conquer existing societies, build new societies, and mold it all into their global empire. Unlike the Dutch, British, and French, who mainly had financial interests, the Spanish idea of empire had more in common with how the Romans built empires. They wished to export the Spanish way of life, assimilate conquered people into their society, and enforce a Spanish social structure upon their subjects. And part of Spanish colonial life was that the colonials were strictly forbidden from owning firearms. Colonial subjects didn't own firearms or even property, but were mostly day laborers on plantations and mining complexes owned by corporate interests like the Basque Guipuzcoan Trading Company. When Spain came to the New World, it encountered large native kingdoms such as the Aztecs, so Spain brought an army and conquered them. But when the Spaniards encountered nomadic native nations in places like Chile, Texas, Venezuela, and New Mexico, they ran into trouble. You can conquer Tenochtitlan, but how do you conquer a constantly moving group of peoples not dependent on one particular spot of land? The Spaniards encountered the same nomadic warfare that bested the Romans, Russians, and Chinese before them, and since they banned their citizens from owning firearms, the only way a semblance of security could be established was by an expensive military.
Okay, so in these times, a lot of people, well, the stronger the empire would be, I guess, like the United States, when the UK tried taking control again or whatever, you had a lot of civilian populations being able to fight back because of them having guns and stuff. This is what, the 1780 or something. And yeah, so I can see that, to be fair, from that point onwards, why maybe the mindset would be, okay, now this worked at this point, so if we have it for future invasions and stuff, it can help again for Serbia too. Like I just always think of Serbia for some reason, because obviously there's a lot of problems in that. There was a lot of problems in that part of the world between Serbia or Yugoslavia and then like Albania, Montenegro, all these countries that are all near each other, I guess, have a higher level of them having guns because they don't want to be like, they want to be able to defend their country pretty much, which I didn't really look into that before or think of it like that before, but it makes sense. All other countries like Yemen, where there's just like war going on and stuff like that.
Presence. In short, it was only safe to live where the Spanish crown stationed troops. Elsewhere, well, not so much. Caracas was burned down by a native warband when it was garrisoned by the Spanish army. The Spaniards fought an almost 300-year-long war with the Apaches, Suma and Mansu throughout northern Mexico, Texas, Nevada and New Mexico. And unlike the wars we know from popular culture involving the Americans from much later, the Spaniards lost. Ranches were burnt to the ground, mines destroyed, and entire towns pillaged and burnt. The Spanish army was hopelessly lost in this vast region, perfect for ambushes and hit-and-run attacks. Spanish settlers were barred from owning any firearms or form militias to defend themselves. Whatever expedition pushed further north and to the east didn't fare any better. Spanish expeditions sent to explore and settle Georgia, Alabama and Mississippi just disappeared, and presumably because they were wiped out by the Cherokee. Jeez. Then in the 1600s, the Spaniards started executing Pueblo shamans for sorcery and witchcraft. The Pueblo, who were a settled people, rebelled and kicked the Spaniards out of Santa Fe and the Rio Grande Valley, restricting Spanish activity to southern Texas and California from then on. The Spanish colonial social order didn't allow for a successful settling of this area, as it was unequipped to conquer and assimilate nomadic natives or patrol the vast lands. The British had a completely different colonial policy. They explicitly encouraged their colonial subjects to own fire.
Oh, so it was the British that done this? Damn. So they were the opposites. They were sort of saying, yeah, you own this and own that for the protection of, I guess, the land and stuff.
Firearms. More than that, they handed out the land they had taken from the natives to settlers. And that land, aka property, is the reason why most of these settlers came in the first place. Europe was a mess of large landowners, serfdom, high grain taxes, and famines. Political rights, if existent at all, were also tied to how much property a person owned. Having a plot of land that was your own was a prospect irresistible to many, and irresistible to the British Crown was what these settlers would do on that property. Buy slaves, grow cash crops, sell them to British trading companies, and thereby increase the wealth of the empire. And the British also allowed the means of defending that property. The settlers would be personally invested in their colonial property and thereby the colonial economy.
At this point in time, would they have had the same rules in the UK? Would they have allowed British citizens to have the same mindset of like you can protect your property and stuff? I don't know if that would have been the case. I'm interested in this because I wouldn't have assumed it would be the UK or Britain that said, "Oh, go ahead, you can have this," because the country that I live in is nowhere like that. But maybe in this time, Britain was like this too, in terms of owning guns and defending land and all this sort of stuff. Damn, this is a big surprise for me.
The British would profit, not have to spend money on an expensive large standing army, could invest in a large navy to bully others, and the armed colonials would take care of the French, natives and Spaniards because they weren't just protecting the empire, but their own property. The The mistake the British made in the end was assuming that this colonial strategy wouldn't backfire.
Fair enough.
The colonial policy of handing out the land and permitting the ownership of guns for settlers is one the British practiced in every colony they settled, which is why all these countries have less constraining laws on private gun ownership to this day, except for those who in modern days introduced gun control laws. The United States, however, is different from the other colonies. Guns and the gun culture that developed became tied to property. The reason one owned a gun was to protect what was yours, or what you had taken from others. It became essential to the promise of the country to those who came to it, but also part of its darkest chapters. As much as you may read or hear of the American gun culture as something tied to a violent history, racism, hunting, frontier life or other, and as much as you might hear debates by legal scholars and politicians theorize the modern and past meanings of the Second Amendment, the truth of the matter is that this country's gun culture developed out of and goes hand in hand with the promise of owning your own property and being permitted to defend what is yours. And that
So it's all, a lot of it's just based around property and like all of that stuff, which kind of goes back to the history of being told that, or like with Britain saying they allowed them to have guns and wanted them to have guns so they can protect their property. So it's just the same kind of mindset through the hundreds of years since. It's kind of the same reasons why.
That is a powerful drive that is hard to break. German and French gun culture revolved around having guns to kill each other. Polish gun culture revolves around being prepared for invasion. Same with Swiss gun culture. And as Europe increasingly became a more peaceful place, these gun cultures, and with them the ownership of guns, eroded or were drastically changed and reinvented. The United States have barely enacted any regulations to limit ownership of firearms, even when a sizable amount of the population used said firearms in an armed insurrection to keep slavery legal. If the Americans didn't restrict firearms ownership after they were used in an attempt to keep slavery legal, I doubt they will do so now.
Yeah, that's a good point, to be fair. I mean, obviously it's a long difference, into 100 years, probably more than that. But yeah.
Now, after massacres and increased gun crime. There is, however, one thing that is steadily undermining the United States gun culture and might eventually be its undoing, something that is largely unnoticed in the modern gun debate. Ownership of private property is on the decline. And with the American gun culture being so deeply tied to property rights, what is most likely to in the end change the legal landscape on firearms in the United States is the change of American society itself from property owners into indebted, rent-paying day laborers.
Well, there we go. I feel like this was a pretty balanced sort of view on this topic. Again, it's not a topic that I know much about. You see the news and stuff. There's horrible. I think something happened in California today. Literally, I woke up and I saw my phone. There was a shooting or something like that, and it's just like, God damn. I don't even want to look at it at this point because it's so sad. But yeah, I mean, it's made me learn and understand a bit more, because obviously when a culture's like ingrained into you, it's easy to look from the outside and think, oh, how can you do this? But when you've grown up in that sort of, in this culture, it's the same sort of thing. Like, there's probably people from the US who are watching my opinions of like never like seeing a gun before, like, or not owning a gun before. I've seen guns in like places, but I don't think I've seen a police officer even hold a gun. Like, it's to that level. I don't think I've ever seen a gun, like in museums and stuff, but I don't think I've ever seen guns, because police officers don't carry guns here unless there's like the special forces, or like if they're like called in to deal with someone who's got a gun or that. But I've never seen that situation, so I could be wrong, but I don't think I have ever seen a gun, which again, people hearing that probably might sound crazy. So I know people aren't just carrying guns around in the US in terms of like just holding them about and stuff. Like, they'll have them in their bags or they'll have them at home. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder what the percentage of people in the US who are past the age of 10 have seen a gun. Do you think every American will have seen a gun past the age of 10? I don't know if that's just a really stupid question, but yeah, I don't know. But let's see some of the comments. As an American, the message to me is clear. Buy more property, buy more guns, be more freedom. Our gun culture is influenced by our history. We were born as a nation out of private gun owners. The first battle of our revolution was started because the British tried confiscating our guns. The Second Amendment was written so the citizens could fight against tyrannical government. Spanish, we We don't trust you with guns, but we can't afford to protect you. England, here's a gun. Protect my money. I mean, for the time, it seems quite smart, but I guess as we all know now, it did backfire just a little bit. But there was something that I wanted to say, but I've completely forgot. I can't remember, but I mean, look, I would never. I don't think I could ever own a gun. I mean, even if I lived in the US, I don't think I could ever own a gun. One of those things that I just wouldn't want to do. But that's because I've grown up in a place where it's a completely different sort of view, I guess. And yeah, I don't know. It's just different. But I mean, it's a different country. Like, the US is a different country. So who's to say what you can and can't do? Like, there's things in the UK or things in other countries that people from other countries will think, how is that? How can you do that? How is this a thing or whatever? But it's just the differences, right? But hopefully you enjoyed this reaction and this didn't annoy you too much. Again, if you believe in guns or you don't want guns or whatever it is. But yeah, I think this is a pretty fair video. It wasn't like too left or too right. It was just kind of giving positives and negatives and reasons for certain things of both. But yeah, until next time, like, subscribe, and peace.